How does a 6-year-old girl from a working-class family in Salford end up a convicted felon, sentenced to 7 years in prison by the age of 18? Our investigation began with a single, sobering document, the prison record of a young woman named Margaret Poole. We thought we were uncovering the life of a criminal, but instead, we found a story of endurance, a hidden child, and a final tragic twist that no one could have predicted. Our search took us to the industrial heart of Victorian England, a landscape of smoke-blackened brick and unrelenting poverty. The 1871 census offered a fleeting image of calm, showing 6-year-old Margaret living with her father Richard, an outdoor laborer, her mother Ellen, and 2 younger brothers. They lived cramped together in the crowded housing of Salford, their lives ruled by the constant fight for work and bread. But what could turn this little girl into the hardened young woman we later met in the prison records? The answer lay buried in the newspaper archives. By 1880, Margaret, now 18, was a factory hand working 12-hour shifts amid deafening machinery and the ever-present risk of injury. It was in this brutal world that she was first convicted and sentenced to a year in prison for stealing a dress from a woman named Agnes Braun. This led us to one crucial question. If she was jailed in December 1880, where would she appear in the national census of April 1881? The census itself gave the grim answer. There, listed among the inmates, was Margaret Poole, held at Bellevue Jail in Gorton, Manchester, a borough jail for short sentences, often given for petty crimes born of desperation. For Margaret, it was her first encounter with the brutal reality of the Victorian penal system, a world far removed from the warmth of her family home. Her story of crime did not end there. Another clipping from the Liverpool Echo in 1882 revealed the next chapter under the headline, "A Disreputable Business." The report detailed how Margaret and an accomplice were charged with stealing a watch and chain from a man named John Brown. The incident had taken place in a house of bad fame, a polite term for a brothel. The judge was unforgiving, declaring that the keeper of such a place must have known the women were both thieves and of ill repute. He noted sharply that Margaret had only just been released from prison for similar behavior. He even scolded the pawnbroker who had accepted the stolen watch, warning him never to take pledges from a fallen woman. To the authorities, Margaret was beyond redemption. But to us, looking back, she appears as a young woman doing whatever she could to survive. The 7-year sentence that followed was a harsh one. While her record noted that she generally behaved well, a deeper look into the prison conduct reports revealed a young woman in great torment. These sparse handwritten notes tell a haunting story. In September 1883, she tried to strangle herself with a piece of cotton, a desperate act of hopelessness. Months later, she defied the silence of her cell by singing loudly. And in May 1884, she slammed her cell door with such force that it shattered the glass and damaged her table. These were not mere disciplinary breaches. They were the cries of a spirit breaking under the unbearable weight of the Victorian prison system. After her release in 1884, Margaret seemed to disappear from official records. For years, her trail went cold. The breakthrough came through modern genealogy, a public family tree created by one of Margaret's descendants. Attached to her 1881 census entry was a note that offered a blend of record and rumor. It seems Margaret had a rather troubled life. I believe she had another daughter at the age of 22, in 1886. Her parents took Jane Poole as their own. Could this be true? Was Jane really Margaret's daughter? The timing fit perfectly. 2 years after her release, Margaret would have been 22. In an age when illegitimacy brought deep shame, it was entirely believable that a family would close ranks to protect their daughter's secret. We searched for proof and found it in the birth register for Salford. On July 19, 1886, a baby girl named Jane N. was born. Her mother, Margaret P., domestic servant. The father's name, left blank. Here lay the hidden truth, quietly recorded. Margaret, trying to start over, had a child. We can only imagine her pain knowing she couldn't provide for her baby and the quiet devotion of her parents, Richard and Ellen, who raised the infant as their own. Jane N. grew up believing Margaret was her sister, a secret kept out of love and necessity. The family tree offered yet another twist. A second daughter, also named Margaret, born around 1901. Though no official record could be found, the descendants' research confidently affirmed her existence. This suggests that after years of hardship and secrecy, Margaret was finally rebuilding her life. That new chapter culminated in 1908, when, at age 44, she married Samuel Truman. That marriage marked a turning point, a chance for redemption, and a hope for the peace and stability she had never known. But fate had a different plan. The final, heartbreaking chapter appeared in the Manchester Evening News, under the headline "Singular Story of a Street Fatality." The inquest from November 1909 told of a moment gone tragically wrong. On a frosty Saturday morning, at their home on Little Peter Street, Samuel was preparing his horse-drawn lorry for a delivery of corn to Stalybridge. Margaret, who often joined him, begged to go along. Samuel refused, pointing to the freezing, foggy weather. The paper noted there were some words, a small, familiar quarrel between husband and wife. Determined, Margaret followed him after he left, walking behind the lorry as it made its way through Ardwick. Opposite St. Silas's Church, Samuel realized she was no longer beside him and assumed she had turned back. Moments later, a scream rang out. Margaret had slipped on the icy pavement and fallen beneath the wheel of the lorry. When she was lifted from the road, her first words were for her husband. "It was my fault," she told him. She died that same day. Her brief glimpse of peace had ended in a single tragic instant. From an innocent child in Salford to a teenage prisoner, a mother forced to give up her child, and finally a wife whose happiness was cut short, Margaret P.'s life was a testament to endurance through unimaginable hardship. Pieced together from records, reports, and family memories, her story stands as a powerful reminder of the thin line between survival and tragedy in the harsh world of Victorian England. Rest in peace, Margaret.